Barton Goldenberg, 30 years in the business, author of 3 books, columnist for CRM magazine for probably a couple of decades, many other publications. We are a company based out of Bethesda, Maryland, with an office in London, England. We are 16 of us. We specialize in the area of CRM and social CRM, customer experience management, knowledge or private or branded communities, the area of channel optimization, and big data and analytics. So that's kind of our little world. We do that through executive briefings, bringing executives teams together so that we can begin to understand what this really is and get the team aligned to doing a movement forward in that area. We do a lot of assessments. We come in and look at how well you're either doing CRM or social CRM or customer engagement management. And then we do a very big roadmap that I created back in 1985 called the CRM Strategy and Implementation Roadmap, and that drives a company to a very successful CRM initiative or social CRM initiative now. And we've done that for lots of very large companies that you would know. I put those up because you do know them. We also work with middle-sized companies, but our sweet spot is middle to large global corporations. And if you are tweeting, the hashtag is social CRM. So I just want to remind those what I initially talked about, and that is we have to sit back once in a while and ask ourselves, how clearly do we really see our customers? How much do we actually know about what's important to them from a sales perspective or a service perspective or a marketing perspective? And the question is, what is the danger if our understanding is not complete about that customer? What if we're really not understanding what's important to them from a perspective of what channel they like to do business with us in? Or what if we don't understand the type of service they're expecting versus the type of service they're receiving? And it led me to conclude several years back that it's very important to really begin to see clearly what is important to the customer. Because ultimately that's going to drive the products and services and how your go-to-market strategy. So I wrote this book, The Definitive Guide to Social CRM, to try to address some of these questions. And as you know, for me anyhow, social CRM is nothing other than the integration of CRM, customer relationship management, and social media. And in that regard, it integrates 2 pieces of what I consider to be the big picture. On the one hand, we have the customer relationship management side, where the focus is largely on transactional things that we've done with the customer. What have we sold them? How have we serviced them? What marketing programs are they on? What opportunities have we identified? What activities or follow-up we have to do, etc. And that's very important because it helps us know the customer. But we have a second side, and a more important side as far as I'm concerned, and that's the social media side. Because people like to talk. People like to share stories. People like to do peer-to-peer exchange. And what we find is as we talk to people, ideas can come about, better ways of doing things. We can hear complaints more clearly. And that's the attitudinal side. Not what have I done with your company in terms of buying or servicing or marketing. How well do I like to work with your company? How much do I enjoy doing business with you? What do I like about your company? What don't I like? And it's been my impression all along that if we can mix the transactional side of what you've done with the company, the CRM side, together with this now social media understanding of what you like or dislike about our company, and we put the 2 together, we're in a much better position to see clearly what's important to the customer and what we can do to better service, sell, and market to that customer. So with that, I just leave you with one final slide as we move on to our second part, and that is the 4-step methodology that I created in the new book, The Definitive Guide to Social CRM. In step number 1, what we're going to do is we're going to listen to both public communities, social media communities, the Facebooks, the Twitters of this world, but we're also going to listen very carefully to private social communities. These are invitation-only communities. They're built on a slightly different platform, but they serve the same way. You have dialogue or forums. You have polls. You have contests. You have the ability to ask the expert questions. the same type of social context. And what we're doing in step number 1 is we're listening to what people are saying about the company or the customer. You remember the Marriott Ritz-Carlton story in Las Vegas. And we're acting upon what we hear by taking that information in step number 2, monitoring and filtering all of this social verbiage that we are open to us. And we're going to bring that down to hopefully an individual so that we now know what a particular person said about our company, and we can then respond to it directly to that person. So in step number 3, once we've listened and filtered and monitored, we're going to now take that insight, I call it social insight, we're going to bring it inside our CRM system, particularly in the customer profile. And now what we have is a more comprehensive understanding of both the transactional and the attitudinal side within the customer profile. In step number 4, that allows us, if you will, to now engage with the customers in ways that we couldn't before. Because not only do we know transactionally what they've done with us, but we now know how they feel about us or what they've said about us, etc. And so it would be my humble observation that this 4-step methodology is a fairly good way to get a company to better understand how to successfully implement social CRM. And at the end of the day, if we can do this correctly, we will now have a profile of that customer that not only contains the transactional side, but has that new bubble of social media insight or social insight that we can again leverage to use in engaging the customer. Okay? And that's just a quick summary of part 1 that we went over. What I'd like to do now is move into part 2. And in part 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, you remember this slide, the 4 ways of putting social CRM into action. In the first step, it was on the bigger picture, the social listening and engagement of public networks or public communities, social media communities. There was a second way I talked about, and that was the external community or private or branded social media community. There was a third way inside the company. We call it internal collaboration or knowledge communities. Remember Johnson Controls. And the channel partner collaboration. Remember the Kraft Food story where we have the ability to tie together distribution channels. So what I'm going to do in the remainder of this section is I'm going to focus on just the one in red, and that's the external communities. And I want to talk through several examples of the private community, private branded communities, and how companies have been able to successfully apply that to their business and the impact that's made for their day-to-day sales, service, and marketing. So a couple of observations. If you remember, the external collaboration is the right-hand side of the 4-step methodology. Okay, so it's the private branded communities. If those that are new to this session, these are by invitation only. It's not where anybody can hang out and join the community as you can in Facebook. In a private community, you have control of the data that's being generated. You have control of the rules that are being made for the community. And you have the ability, if you will, to really work closely with the invited participants to create a true sense of a peer-to-peer collaboration and community. So that's what we're talking about. And I'd like to talk about, right, refer to the whole channel distribution model. Think of a company for a minute, and many of you may be that type of company, where you manufacture a product or a service, and it's not necessarily sold directly to the end customer immediately, but rather it goes through a distribution channel, and it could be a distributor, it could be a wholesaler, it could be a retailer, but this some member of the distribution channel or some members between the manufacturer of the product or service and the ultimate end user. Okay, is everybody with me on this? So this I call the whole channel distribution model, and a lot of companies today are faced with this situation. They make a product, it's distributed through one or more channel members, ultimately to the end customer. But what happens is they sell the product to the first member of the distribution channel, could be the wholesaler, could be the distributor, could be the retailer. But they lose contact as the product moves down the distribution channel to the end customer because that's not where they play, that's not the field they play in. The distributor has their rules and regs and sells to the retailer. The retailer has their rules and regs and sells to the end customer. But unfortunately, the manufacturer is not familiar or engaged with the customers downstream. And so the risk, of course, is that the manufacturer loses touch with what's important to the end customer. Are any of you facing this type of a situation in your business? Okay, good. I see quite a few hands shaking. So I just took that as an example where you've lost the voice of the customer because you're selling through a multi-step distribution channel, and where you need customer advocacy at the ultimate level to drive the sale of the products or services that you're selling. So what you're looking for is the ability to pull product through the distribution channel rather than to push product through the distribution channel. Because in this scenario, you're pushing it through to the first step in the distribution channel. If you are now active in a social community and you're with your end customers, you can also have them pull the product through the distribution channel. So what you're getting is the classical marketing push, pull, and that drives for much better sales of products and services. So that's kind of the situation. On the distributor side, or we'll call it the intermediary, the steps in the distribution channel, you do have a lot of distributors that really would like to drive sales, and they'd like to be on a community with the end customer and participate with the manufacturer and the end customer so that we kind of have a big happy family. And the customers can talk to the manufacturers, and the distributors can feed back information to the customers, and we begin to really exchange and collaborate effectively. And that's something of great importance to the distributors. It also helps because the distributors, as in all people, they have people that retire from their company. They take good knowledge when they retire. So now we have new hires that come into the distributors, their sales or marketing. The community allows them a capability to be involved in what took place in the past, where we have digital records of the discussions and the forums and the threads, et cetera. So it's another way for distributors to keep actively involved inside their whole distribution channel. On the customer support side, what we also find is when you have a community up and running, you can then begin to deflect questions to the community. So in several of the communities we work with, the manufacturer of the offering, the product or the service, they really don't do a lot of customer service. Members of the community do the service for them. Now, you have to train certain members. There's certain rules and regulations you want to follow, but what you can do when you have an active, involved community is you can turn a lot of the servicing over to the community, because members love to talk to other members and tell them how they fixed a particular problem or issue. Okay? So this is the scenario that I'm talking about, external collaboration. Let me talk a little bit about the goals that we set when we implement these types of communities. So I'm just going to give you some examples that may be that we want to maintain and increase customer engagement and interaction. So I'm talking about customers further down the distribution channel beyond the first stop that you may be selling to. Or we may want to raise brand awareness and customer loyalty by getting the customers to talk about our product or service with other customers, thereby driving interest and ultimately loyalty. We may want to provide our members with this online private type of community that I'm talking about, which has a corporate URL, so an ability for the company to brand it by themselves, where you can access it from work, where you can access it from anywhere, and you're part of the community. Now, one of the faux pas in the public communities, and we face this all the time, is if you wanted to create a global community on Facebook, you can't do that because Facebook's not allowed in China for the communities. So, if your market happens to be important in China, you're in big trouble. Whereas in a private type of community, an external collaboration, you have the capability now of creating that on a global basis with a corporate URL. You give that permission to whoever has the right to use it. They click on it. They're right into the community. And as you get further into these private communities, you can invite prospects through your main website that are qualified to the private community, and that's a nice way to get prospective customers to become actual customers. Okay? There are other reasons that goals they may have, reinforcing technology leadership or expertise by having the community. You're showing off the ability to be a front runner, to be digitally advanced, and so forth. Quickly resolving customer issues using, as I've already alluded to, peer-to-peer intervention and interactions. What that does in several of our communities, the members will say, we get very quick answers to our questions, unlike we ever did before. And very often it's not the company that's giving the answers to the questions, it's peer-to-peer. And by the way, we monitor all of these conversations so that if they're really getting bad advice, we can always correct it. And even if somebody says something wrong, you'd be very surprised, but 10 other members will come in and correct it. I mean, it has its own way of self-regulating. Other goals of people using this is the ability to share customer recommendations or experiences. We've seen lots of members wanting to share their story through photos, through case studies, where they share it with their peers. And people like to talk to one another about things that are important to them. And so the sharing is a very important concept behind a successful community and one of the goals of companies. Using gamification and contests to drive member engagement. We have applied gamification to most of our communities now. It's just a fun way of earning points. You're doing your day-to-day work in the community. You're reading articles or talking to people. But we give you little, incentives to go to this section that you haven't looked at in a month, or we give you, a certain number of points so you can get a nice jacket. And so we use gamification as a vehicle to just help you enjoy your experience. It doesn't interfere. It's just kind of a value add. And a lot of companies set that as a goal to drive, that member engagement. And lastly, we talk about the ability as a goal to create a community where we can really begin to bring our company's subject matter experts as well as third-party experts in an industry together in a community. We invite the customers and or members of the distribution channel, and now we have a big discussion. And I can only tell you from experience, having done this now for 7 years and building these private communities and integrating with CRM, it's quite amazing. When you're in a private community and you're on a topic that's of importance to you, and you can really learn something, how willing people are to participate and willing to share and willing to learn. And we use subject matter experts usually at the beginning of a community from the company because they know best. But as the community begins to build its own legs, what we find is that we have what are called super users within a community. And they can very often be as good or sometimes better than the subject matter experts from the company. So you, again, begin to rely less on your own people, more on the community to carry itself over time. And that becomes very exciting because then you can really do all kinds of fun things with the community. So these are some of the goals that we found companies to set in creating these types of communities. In terms of KPIs or key performance indicators, I'll give you a couple of the goals that most companies will set in creating these communities and then integrating into CRM. I've got a list of several examples. Advocacy would be one. So people that get on a community, members that are part of it, and then they recommend to other members, you really should try this. It's actually pretty good. And we monitor this with every community we build. And it's a lot of people that are happy in a community participating are more than happy to also recommend product or service. So advocacy can be a goal, and you set that literally by number of recommendations, or there's different ways of setting the metric. Engagement is very important. These are people, and you can measure that through how many conversations they have, how often they get on, how many posts, meaning how many times they'll type in information or thoughts to a community. But that gives you some level of engagement. What we know is engagement is important for the health of the community. So that's another metric that is important. Community growth, that's very important. How many new members we add. There's it's a glass that does drip from the bottom time to time. So you're always adding new from the top. So what we do is we measure how many new members are there. We also measure member longevity. That's also important because that helps get members to talk to members and share information. The whole sales side, I'm a real stickler on that. I call it the sales lift from the member. At AAA, for example, the way we did their communities, we did 6 of them, or participated in helping to do 6 of them. We looked at the members that belong to the community, AAA members, the American Automobile Association. How many belong to the community? What did they buy in that particular year? Because we have their membership number, versus non-members that did not members that did not belong to the community. And we looked at the difference in spend between members of the community and non-members of the community. That gave us an actual dollar figure. We measured that against the cost of the community, and we started to get some serious return on investment. So any community, I can just speak for our company that has been involved in creating these private communities that integrate them into social CRM. If I don't have a sales metric and I can't measure it, I don't want to create that community. Because at the end of the day, we make the community not just as a way of branding and collaboration, but I need to see money flowing directly from that community, and that's what justifies the cost. Another one is cost avoidance. I talked a little bit about this earlier. The number of service tickets, service calls, service whatever that is now being deflected back to the community. And in some communities, I can speak for Verizon, others, we're talking, and Cisco, by the way, is a good one, not the S Cisco, but the C Cisco in the technology industry. 98% of all issues for Cisco are solved in their communities. So Cisco doesn't even get involved anymore. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And the last one I put in red, those always remind me what I want to talk about, and that is satisfaction in a community. And let me show you what I mean by satisfaction. Below, by the way, we typically have outcome ranges, typical red, yellow, and green. Red, they made significant changes, or we need to make significant changes or walk away from the community. We set the metrics, it didn't work over a 12-month period. We want to move on, something didn't happen. Yellow, incorporate the learnings, manage the pace, spend, but proceed with caution. Green, we've met our metrics, add new audiences, new product lines, new capabilities. In most of the communities, we are really in the green. And it takes hard work to get there, but we can get there. So here's the satisfaction. I took some actual quotes out of some of the communities that we've worked with. I just want to share them with you. This is what happens in a community. And imagine again that this is, or I remind you, this is private community where they've given us permission to capture this information and use it either to better service them or to create better products and services within our company. So we're not snooping around. We have full permission to do this. And look at what they've said. So member satisfaction is increasing in all areas. This is one community as measured by anonymous member survey. So members have confirmed improvement in accessing expertise, sharing insight, and feeling engaged in the community based on the last survey. As a result of participation, more than 1/3 of all members have purchased more product, and more than 40% of Distributors members have sold more product. Now, for the purpose of this presentation, I took this exact numbers out and the names of the distributors, but it's anonymous, but we actually work with the community members, and we actually know how effective the community is working. And when you start to spend money and get lifts of 30+% and 40+%, that could be very meaningful for a global corporation. I put on the right-hand side some quotes. These came directly out of the surveys we recently did on 2 of the communities. It says, we discovered that we could improve some of our practices based on the success stories. We've changed our maintenance schedule based on information in the articles. Some of the community topic informers have made us look closely at the product we're using to determine if in fact they're the right ones or if we should upgrade. Now look at some of these quote folks. This is the customer talking. This is wonderful. I'm going to show you a bit more where we can actually act on it. But this is what we call social insight. This is coming right from them. I took the names out of all this, but we know exactly who this person is, and we know why they asked a question about products. Well, guess what we're giving the salesperson tomorrow morning? A small reminder that you might want to chat with this person. They've been on the community. They've stated that they might, maybe should we upgrade? That's what we call a qualified lead in sales. You with me? Okay, so this is another quote. I thought this was a wonderful quote. I've taken out all the names and everything. He's a distributor for one of the companies, but this is an example of branded community delivering impact. So the community is a powerful site where I can get new product tips and product benefits to use with my customers and prospects, because he's the distributor. The best application is the forum. That's where you have discussion. I've shared several questions about specific product requirements. I've received good answers and recommendations from the members, the technical support team. Now read what he said. We've won several significant orders during the past few months due to the support provided in this community. Bingo! That's what we want. I've taken several new orders. But the best utility, in my point of view, is the possibility to know other experiences and people who have had similar situations around the world in this community. Again, this is the voice of the customer, and our job as good marketing and salespeople is to leverage that, put it in the customer profile of CRM, and then engage the customer effectively. So a couple of other examples of, I want to give you some real specific examples of social insight. So by listening to what is said in the community, in these external, privately branded communities, sales reps, marketing people, field engineers, servicing people, other customer-facing personnel, they're in a unique opportunity to now interact with the customer. They couldn't interact like this before. This is live. This is in real time. This is collaborative. This is sharing with fellow, peer-to-peer. So let me take 4 specific examples from other communities, and I want to show you how you go from social insight to action. Okay? So this is one. It's a distributor on this particular community. He said, I would be very interested in any information you might have regarding product A, particularly how it's being used in these particular industries. Now, if you're a sales guy or gal, or a marketing guy or gal, and I already took out the product A and I took out the industries, we know exactly what product this person's talking about, and we know exactly what industries. we have something to talk about with distributor Dave A. the next time we chat with him. Another example, this one is also a distributor. It's a woman, Debbie B. We've seen increasing demand for products that work in high temperature situations. Can you recommend any additional products we should consider? So again, this is coming right out of the community in the middle of a forum or a discussion where somebody has actually said, I do this for a living. Could you please tell me additional products we should consider? You don't get better qualified leads. There's no pressure here. They did it under collaborative peer-to-peer discussion. Here's from a customer, Rob C. He's in a particular country. It's Mexico, I happen to know that. But here's an issue that mattered to that particular customer. Good day, he said, I want to ask if anybody has any information about biodegradability of these particular products, particularly how it's measured. Hello? So now we have the capability from our engineering staff to go out and help this particular customer. Maybe the community will help the customer, but we too have a qualified lead. Here's a fourth example. This is Susan. She's a customer, and sustainability is important to her. So she said it's extremely important in our industry. Saving our environment should be everybody's responsibility. The carbon footprint left by our industry has an impact. Is there any formula based on historical data that can show the impact of changing to a different product line? Wonderful, wonderful. So what do we do with all this? As I alluded to in part one of this boot camp, our job now is to take this social insight and integrate it directly into our CRM system, from which we now have a record of what was said, and we can then turn that over to sales, marketing, customer service. So in this particular case, we integrate the social insight coming from the community participation into the profile within the CRM, and then we allow the customer-facing personnel to use this information to better engage the customer. So let's go back to the 4 examples I just gave you. For Dave A., if you remember that was a distributor, the sales rep from the company that created this community would follow up and provide any writings on product A or the industry issues that they asked for. Qualified lead. If you remember, Debbie B. was also a distributor. Their sales rep would follow up with suggested products for use in high temperature situations, which was her interest. In the case of customer Rob C. from Mexico, the rep of the distributor would follow up with a discussion on biodegradability and how best-in-class companies are measuring it. And in the case of Susan D., another customer, her sales rep would follow up maybe to discuss sustainability. In her case, I know it was electrical consumption resulting from the new product line. So what we have now is a direct capability to go from social insight to an action that the company can take to follow that up. So let me just summarize before we open the discussion. I told you there'd be plenty of room for discussion. What's the real value of these communities and of integrating into social CRM? And here's some thoughts that I kind of put together. So first of all, you have better informed reps. These are people now that gain insight into issues of importance to either distributors or customers. They're better informed, and anybody that's been in sales knows that a better informed rep is a better rep because they're able to talk and negotiate with customers more effectively. We also have the ability now to have deeper insight into issues. So sales reps learn not only what product information their distributor and customers are interested in, but also broader interests like biodegradability or sustainability. So we can open up a new area where we have a discussion, where we go to visit the customer and have something, as I say in the next one, something new to talk about. So in this particular case, when visiting the distributor or the customer, the sales rep now can engage in conversations that were talked about in the community, and the distributor or the customer had something important to talk about. And again, this is just a nice, cordial, collaborative, non-threatening way of extending a conversation. Or the community can help speed of learning because the reps or other members that are part of the community can learn quickly about an issue. It can be a forum, it can be a discussion, it can be blog posts, it can be all kinds of different things where we get some really serious focus on a particular issue. And if you're somebody that's either as a customer distributor or even a member of the company, the learning curve is a quick learning curve because all of a sudden you're a part of an ongoing learning collaborative environment. And lastly, speed of response. Reps can act immediately on social insight that's secured from the community. So these are some thoughts that I had. for those that are interested, I put down a group of URLs where you can have some information about companies that have done social CRM. I've got a Siebel reference to General Motors that's using social CRM. I've got a Microsoft CRM, social CRM capability to a German company called the Liber Group. By the way, I want to read in red what it's a case study, and I just pulled the main section out of the case study. It says, even though the system is called social engagement, we don't want to reduce it to social monitoring. For us, it's a social customer relationship management system. It's the future of CRM. I didn't write that quote. That was the president or the head of the Liber Group, which is a very large industrial group out of a German equipment manufacturer. It's also based in Switzerland. And then Salesforce, which you would kind of expect, is doing a very nice job. There are many good stories of social CRM in Cisco, Yamaha, Belkin. I've got 3 or 4 different URLs in that as well. If you can't read it, and I know it's a little small, come up afterwards and I'll try to get you that slide. What I want to do now is I just want to remind you of the 4-step methodology, and then I want to open this up to question and answer. So again, the concept behind the power of social CRM, or the 4-step methodology in the book: we listen carefully to what public and private communities have to say. Public, very good to get branding and information out. Not so good in terms of restricting who can join the community, who can't. Private communities better at invitation only, having more intimate, more peer-to-peer, cordial, relevant discussions. But regardless, we use digital listening tools and digital crawlers to listen, whether it's the Ritz-Carlton young lady or whether it's from the ExxonMobil community or any of the other ones. And we then monitor and filter what's being said, because again, I think it's very important. You may want to find out how is the Marriott brand being received in general, or the Fairfield Inn brand, or the Ritz-Carlton brand, or the Courtyard brand of Marriott. That may be important in general, but typically you want more to find out, what is customer Bart Goldenberg, Platinum Elite? What did he feel about his last day at the Marriott Marquis in New York? That's much more important, because then I go to the next Marriott as a Platinum Elite. They say, hi Bart, I heard you had a really nice time. They put you in a king suite. I hope you enjoyed it, and so forth. And so now I'm connected to the company better. You with me? So that's the monitoring and filtering. And by the way, there are all kinds of issues involved with all of this. I'm not going to tell you it's easy to do, but it gets done. It can get done very well and very effectively. We then take that social insight that comes out of the monitoring, filtering, drop it in our CRM, particularly for me, the customer profile. You remember where I'm coming from on that. It's a new petal on the flower of the profile. And then what we're doing is, once we're in the, and by the way, a lot of people ask this question, why is this step important? I'll tell you why. We could take the information and directly give it to the sales guy or gal or the marketing, but we have no record of what took place. When we drop it in our CRM system, it's in the profile permanently. So we have a record of what took place. That's why the CRM step is so important. And once it's in CRM, then you can have all kinds of fun in engaging with the customer the way they want to engage with you, through the channels that they've asked for, through the products and services that they're talking about, through the, all kinds of things, product ideas, recommendations. So this is a kind of a nice little 4-step methodology. I hope you enjoy it. As I said in the first section, I'll say it again in this one, and then I really want to open it. When you get to 30 years in a business, and we've been rather successful, we're very honored to have all the clients we do, you're no longer looking for anybody that's going to give you business. We look for customers that are really prime and ready to do business, and are willing to maybe push some boundaries out of the way, be a little more innovative, put some cash up front, devote some people and resources to take the company to the next level. Those are the companies we're looking for at this point in time. And if you feel you're one of those, I'd be very honored to talk with you further. And I mentioned come visit us in the book. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your participation.